Previously in X-Men, way back in X-Men 108, we learned that the space pirate Corsair is secretly Nathan Summers, Major Nathan Summers, the father of longtime X-Men leader Scott Summers, also known as Cyclops. Corsair and his ragtag crew have not been seen since helping Phoenix and the X-Men save the universe, leaving the familial relationship unrevealed. And a few issues back, the X-Men defeated Magneto, who then abandoned his secret lair in the Bermuda Triangle. Whoa, major soap opera stuff here. I am Jason Lapidus.
I am Chris Sanagan.
And we are Group of Seven Comics. And welcome to episode 65 of our never-ending Tuesday night live stream read-through of the X-Men comics that made it a classic, as we read Uncanny X-Men 154 or Classic X-Men 58, cover date of February 1982. How are you, Chris?
I'm good. I'm trying to think back to February 1982. It was a wee baby. But I remember it like it was yesterday. No, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I've been looking forward to this all day today, mostly just because of the cover art of X-Men Classic 58.
So not the cover art of the actual comic.
No, not the cover art of the actual comic. It got me thinking. I'm just going to pull it up here. It's no secret that you and I are fans of the one and only Mike Mignola.
Yes.
And this is a reproduction, like a printing of the original art. So I didn't find an image of the original art. I found like a poster that was printed of that original art. But as far as I'm concerned, it's good enough. You can see everything you need to see. So you and I are fans of Mike Mignola. We're fans of his covers. And I love sometimes to figure out like why things work and why things don't work. And in this, there's a couple things he's doing here that are really great. One, this is the black and white version. I'll show you the color version in a minute. He's really choosing his blacks, like where he's putting heavy blacks, as they often call it, spotting blacks or spotting inks, and using it as a way to draw attention or not draw attention. So let's a couple quick hellos. Hello to Jason Lowe. That's one sexy Mignola cover. It absolutely is. To me, my ex-friends. Jason, how are you? Glad you can be here. Are you a fan of Mike Mignola's covers or his art in general? I'm curious. I know that I'm saying Chris and I are. So sure, he's hiding feet, which is a thing a lot of these guys do, because they're really not as important as they are to our actual anatomy. But so he's spotting inks in a way that really draws attention to a few things. So Chris, have you ever heard of the term depth of field?
Well, I know all those words.
So in this context, we're referring to the creation of and the reading of a 2D illustration into 3D, and how certain techniques can create depth and different like layers of depth. So like the first layer of depth that we would see are these tentacles that are right up close. And by Mignola putting them in jet black right up close to us and adding a little bit of texture to them, like classic Mignola rough texture with almost no detail, he really brings them forward, creating the idea that our characters are in the midfield. They're not way deep. They're not way close. They're in the middle of the frame. And then by not having any like any black spotting or ink spotting on the aliens in the very back, it pushes them way back in the depth. So we have a front layer of the tentacles, the characters in the rubble in the middle, and the aliens in the far back. So he's creating a depth of field 3 layers deep through his technique. And this is really sound communicating. You know, we now know what's important. We have a sense that they're surrounded, even though we can't see that. It's just really, really smart. And then when we go to the color version, let me just switch that up here for a second. When we go to the color version, we can see, here we go, that the colorist, whoever that might be, and hopefully it's him, they didn't make her lightning bolts white, because that would make her lightning bolts pop. more than her cape does or her body does. And so,
Mhm.
the only red on the cover is like Cyclops' belt, his visor, or sorry, his optic blasts, and Corsair's costume. And then the only like fully saturated blue is just Cyclops. That back is like, fades backwards. And then she gets the high contrast of like the black and white. So she pops. So each of them pops for a really good reason graphically. And the other colors are sort of left to be other things. And it just really creates, like I said, the depth of field. It focuses, and all the elements draw us to the middle. So the tentacles all point to the middle. Her lightning bolts point to the middle. Like it's about these three characters surrounded. It tells us a little story.
Yeah, and it's also symmetrical too, right? So you've got the Corsair and Cyclops in almost the exact same pose,
Sure.
on either side of each other. You've got the reverse of their colors to a degree.
Yeah.
You've got the same intensity in their motion, in their in their behavior. You've got a just kick-ass mustache on Corsair.
The the butchest mustache he's ever been drawn with.
So great. And if you were unaware of the connection between Corsair and Cyclops, there's another level where it's father and son are, they're mimicking each other because they are father and son. So It's wonderful. It's really wonderful.
And then the rubble of the house, right?
Yes.
Which we kind of learn sort of by the end that is going to be the case. So I'm just a really big fan of this cover. I think it's great. And it's really led me to thinking that I just got to get all these Marvel covers. And I started thinking, I don't want all the... I looked it up and I did a count. And he did about 58. I think, actually, is it 58? He did... I have my list here. It's ironic.
58 Marvel
53. Covers? 53 Marvel covers, I think.
That includes all like X-Men, Alpha Flight.
About 53.
Okay.
So it's not too hard to collect, but I was thinking I don't want some of those comics. Like I have doubles of an issue of Quasar that he did, just the cover. And I don't...
Did you say Quasar? Well, I unboxed a Quasar earlier today with my family.
So that's awesome.
He's hunting.
So I was thinking about, and also the cartoonist kayfabe guys have been going on about making your own books and sort of finding high-res images of things and then make your own artist edition or make your own, hardcover. I was thinking this is one I might have my arm twisted to make, is like the Marvel cover art of Mike Mignola. You know what I mean? That would be an edition I'd want on that bookshelf. Is just not Kickstarter. No, you can't. It's just for me, and you,
and also me. It's true. Whenever you and I are just bin diving and hanging out and we come across Mignola cover, it's really hard for us to put it.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for that. Anthony says, "Good evening, gentlemen. I got to get my hands on those classic X-Men issues with Mignola covers. You're gonna compete with us, man. You got to compete with us. I want those too." Jason says, "I dig his covers, including his Batman ones. Yeah, I've got some of those as well, and they're beautiful. I think it was it called Dark City?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was once talking about that before. I think it's a 3-parter with the Riddler, if memory serves.
Did he also do the Doom that came to Gotham, which is now going to be an animated?
Right.
And I think he did that one too.
I don't remember who did that one. I want to say he didn't. But I don't actually remember. It's definitely spun out of his work on Gotham by Gaslight. Graydon says, "Live stream black and white." That was from the previous original art reproduction we saw. Graydon, thank you again for co-hosting with me last week. It was a pleasure. So that was awesome. Graydon did a good job in your absence there,
Sure,
Mr. Sanagan. Yes.
Sure.
Jason says the white lightning would get lost with the white of the X-Men masthead anyway. True, and the X-Men masthead is a color choice. So they can choose how they want to color that. It would have gotten lost. So it was just a good strategic thing to have it in yellow. And it isn't really the focal point. Like, her power is not the focus of the conversation. I think it's nice and understated and kind of fun. Graydon says, "You can drive a chopper with that stash." So back to the stash. In the multiple iterations of Corsair that I've been looking at in the last couple days, this is, like I said, the butchest one. The one in the animated series, an episode called I believe it's called the Phoenix Saga Part 4 Starjammers. It's a very thin handlebar.
Sure, I see what you got. Yeah.
And we'll see how Cockrum draws it when we get into this issue. But everyone sort of has their own take on it, and, and Mignola's is right out of like Jim Gordon, from
The old
Gotham
feather
by
duster.
Gaslight. Oh, it is.
Duster.
That is a heavy one. It's fun to see, so I'm a big fan. Anyway, that's hilarious.
That's it. That's the comic. That's the show tonight. It's just the cover art of that one extra comic.
Well, so let's compare now with what Cockrum did and his choices, and we can see. So this strange color hold stuff, where the alien monsters are not done with any black; they're all purple. Well, yeah, which is otherworldly, and I dig that.
But we've seen it before. We saw it with the Caliban comic book, where he is in all purple, and I was saying at the time the cover, I couldn't just get my head around the cover. It threw me in different directions because of the lack of maybe outline, perhaps. I'm not quite sure. But this to me is the same trick they're trying. Oh, remember how we did that one and the purple and the shadow? And I just don't think it works. But.
I don't think it works either. It also I find it's distracting. Like I don't know where to look.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're so saturated. And they're rendered underneath. Like there is shadow on the bottom half of each of them, but the top half is this odd purple. It is a weird one for sure. And Storm's Lightning's got the white in it, which then just adds to the brightest bright and the darkest dark and the highest saturation. Like those are the places we're going to look first. So I don't know where to look first. And the narrative that Mignola creates, it's not here in their body language.
Yeah.
And the rubble is like an afterthought.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting to see like what a master Mignola is, even early on in relatively early on in his tenure at Marvel. He's been there maybe since about 83, sort of as an inker, and then through the 80s getting better and better. And his cover work by the end of the 80s is really, really great. He's still a few years away from creating Hellboy, but his style it's all the pieces are there. It's really cool.
Hellboy's what, mid 90s, like 94?
You know what? I'm going to defer. You can look it up while I advance
use the computer.
Our dialogue here. But yeah, I think it's earlier in the 90s, maybe 93 even.
Okay, all right.
Through Dark Horse. He's going to have, I think the Image stuff gets rolling, and he's gets stuff going at over at Dark Horse. But again, you can feel free to correct me. I'm not that sharp on my Hellboy, even though I really, really do love Mike Mignola. I'm just not a huge collector of Hellboy yet. Hopefully one day I get a good collection of that stuff. Anything else you want to talk about before we dive into this one?
No, I think I'm probably all right. I mean, again, it just was that repetitive piece about the purple. Yeah. All right.
I got something quick.
Sure.
Thank you again to our friend Julian, who gifted us with this amazing biography, The Art and Life of Dave Cockrum, by Glenn Cadigan. And it has tons of interviews from a wide variety of sources and lots of behind-the-scenes art, character stuff for our X-Men co-creator here, Dave Cockrum. And I just wanted to follow up on last week's episode. Chris, I'm assuming you didn't read the issue. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't have to. Assuming you didn't read it, and I'm assuming you didn't watch it. And I hope both of those are true.
Oh, I read 153. I did not watch this because I don't want to be intimidated by Graydon. So and that's I don't want to feel bad about my own. Yeah. Anyway, but I did read the issue though, and it was just bonkers. But I really enjoyed it. I actually found myself really enjoying it, and I had thoughts on it. So I got to go check the video out to see if you guys picked up the same thoughts.
So Graydon asked some questions about some background of that issue, and I didn't have the answers at the time. I was doing other things in life. It's fine. So I wanted just to follow up with you, Graydon, specifically, and with any viewers out there that are interested in where that fairy tale issue came from. So there was this old comic from a company called Tower back in the 1960s. Tower Comics. There was a series called Thunder Agents, which was their superhero thing, and there was an issue of that where there was a character who did a fairy tale, and it was always Cockrum said one of his favorite issues. So this was his idea. Was he wanted to do a fairy tale thing, and he always loves the more lighthearted content, not what the X-Men actually are, but what he loves the lighthearted, swashbuckling, and fairy tale stuff. So he co-plotted that issue. It's his concept, and he wanted to do it as like a double-sized issue. Like he really had a big fairy tale premise, and editorial was like, "There's not enough story here for a double-sized." He's like, "How about a two-parter?" And they're like, "There's not enough story for a two-parter, Dave." So it's like the thing he wants most. Another time where he doesn't really get his way, and it only turns out to be this single issue. And his son is quoted here as saying, like, when talking to his dad about his dad's life, this issue was his dad's favorite creation, was issue 153.
Wow.
Yeah, that's his favorite one. Kitty's Fairy Tale.
It's two quick things, and you may have talked about them on the previous show, so just stop.
No, please.
However, two things jumped out at me right away in the issue in terms of design and where ideas go later in life. That Colossus image, that's Age of Apocalypse Colossus, right? With the bandana, and isn't that
and the bandolier like
that's Age of Apocalypse Colossus.
I don't know if you can make a dead connection. I don't know if
pretty.
So if you're trying to make something with some asymmetry, like there are only so many things you can try.
Right.
You'd have to ask whatever Kubert brother that was, whether it was Andy or Adam. I never remember.
Right.
You have to ask them where that inspiration comes from. And from what I understand, in creating the character pitches for that series, it was all very fly by the seat of the pants, no plan. Right. So it could be like, yeah, I always loved that Colossus. I'm just bringing that thing in.
Okay.
Like I've heard the version of where the Wolverine design from Age of Apocalypse comes from, and he just said like he was just drawing them and just like messing around. Like, what happens if he only has one hand? They're like, oh yes,
that's it, bro.
That's it. The whole story comes out because Wolverine has one hand. So sometimes things come from these little spots. I have not heard about the Colossus.
Did you bring it up last week?
Definitely not.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad that's something.
I'm glad you did too.
Age of
Apocalypse. Oh, please.
Second thing is the Kitty Pryde swashbuckler pirate goes to Excalibur, that kind of vibe, and now she's leading Marauders, correct? Which is like a piratey thing. That's where it went to all those places.
Yeah.
Reading the issue. I read it tonight before I read the other issue. But
it's a very special issue.
No, but like it's funny. This is the magic though of the whole reason we're doing this. At the heart of it, right? Is we're going.
It's all about issue 153.
Classic run. It's all about one. It all culminates with one at the zenith, 153. No. But like whether or not, to your point, it's intentional or not, right? Or it was stored in someone's memory bank, and hey, I always thought Colossus looked good with the bandana, or not, or whatever it is. Like we're drawing out, or like my mind went, I don't even read Marauders. I just know it exists, and I know Kitty Pryde is part of it and leads it, and it's a crew, and I'm like, oh, it's kind of piratey, right? It's got that vibe to it.
Right.
And I've never read Age of Apocalypse, but I know the friggin' Build-A-Figure from Marvel Legends is that we talked about whatever episode we talked about that figure being like, everyone get on that Colossus figure. So I find it amazing. And this, again, the magic of, I think, why we do this is that like you can intentionally or unintentionally, you can pick out these touch points that speak to other parts of the creation of this franchise, which the genesis is this run, which is why it's to me it's a special thing.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm particularly fascinated, like I've been saying in the last many weeks, by how it's going to fall apart, how the run's going to fall apart, how an editorial change around issue 232 and how the industry shifts towards the Image Boys and them having more sway over the direction of the stories. And Chris Claremont, he becomes a victim of his own success, and the franchise is too valuable to let him handle the whole thing, even though it really is successful because of so much of his work. I want to see this journey, and I want to see it go off the rails, as I've been reading both ends of the series. Oh yeah, we are. We're going to see some pretty wild stuff and some pretty cool stuff along the way too. So I'm digging it. Trevor, 1/6 shooter, how you doing, man? Glad you're here. Here we go.
Shall we?
We need to talk about this issue. Make it go.
And go.
Whoa! Reunion.
Whoa, look at his butt.
I don't have so many positive things to say about Cockrum a lot of the time. In that he just chooses, I find, strange or uninteresting angles. And this is no exception. This is not compelling. So, yeah, the issue starts off. We don't get the regular kind of chat. And again, this is another issue where we don't get that thing at the very top that tells us, hated and feared by the people they've sworn to protect. That stuff. It's not there. But let me just start that by saying Chris Claremont is the writer here. Dave Cockrum, Bob Wiacek, and Joe Rubinstein are the artists. Probably that Dave is doing layouts and maybe some pencils, and maybe Bob is doing a little bit more finishes and maybe some inks, and Joe is doing inks, maybe some finishes as well. It's unclear, but the fact that there are three of them, and the fact that Dave was notoriously slow and did a lot more what you call blue line pencils, like just roughing stuff in a little bit more, not penciling all the way, and that's why I think Bob might have done some of the finishes. There you go. And just other things of note. Still, Louise Jones, later to be Louise Simonson, is editor, and yet Jim Shooter, editor-in-chief, not playing a huge role directly in what's going on here. Often combative with the X team, but not in this juncture. Anyway, so they're playing a version of handball in the Danger Room. I think what makes this interesting is this is the first appearance of the rivalry between Storm and Cyclops, and this is important.
Right.
Yeah. How beautiful are those swashbuckler boots, that cuff. Holy cow. That is not a tight cuff the way Byrne would draw it. That is a loose bell-bottom cuff.
It's going to get caught in all sorts of things. Nails, door hinges.
So we know that Storm has been the not de facto leader. What would be another word? Not replacement, but she's been the field leader in Cyclops' absence. Yeah. And he did participate. The acting leader. And Cyclops did participate in the last couple issues in combat. And there hasn't been any kind of formal arrangement as to who is leader of the team. And, Storm was on the team while Cyclops was the leader, so you'd think she'd be a little submissive to him at times, or at least willing to sit back. So I'm curious to see how it's going to play out.
Leaf Maple Leaf playoff run, when Sundin goes down in 2003, and Gary Roberts puts his team on his back. He and Alan McCauley, and they're just they're barnstorming through the Eastern Conference, and they meet the Carolina Hurricanes in the Eastern Conference Final. Sundin comes back, and the whole chemistry goes. The Leafs lose. Not, by the way, I love Matt Sundin. Just saying, it felt a little bit
too.
Like that. I just as you were saying that, like the kind of presumptive leader in the wings, right? That. The people who also commands respect, who also is a powerful entity and a powerful personality unto themselves. So what I'm saying is, Storm is Gary Roberts.
Storm is Gary Roberts. She's not Alan McCauley.
No,
but if you remember,
McCauley.
In that series, Thomas Cabrera's soft play is one of the reasons they got defeated. So I wonder who plays Cabrera in this analogy. So yeah, they're playing handball, and it's sort of like a bit of a pissing contest, It
is.
And there's talking about
it's
sort
playful
of who,
too. Playful and intense.
It is playful, and who's better at what, and they
game recognized game.
Yes, if you want to flip through a little bit. And they talk about both of them are getting kind of tired. They're probably Cyclops is out of shape, as you can see by his amazing physique.
Yeah.
And they're both sort of sweating, and it's kind of a gross way to draw sweating. It's just these faces with random drops on them.
It is gross. It is gross.
And they talk about Wolverine also having a little bit of this sort of play where he loves to make bets and compete, and again that him and Nightcrawler, they compete for beer.
Well, so now that's really interesting you mentioned that, not the competing for beer part, but the partnering off of our characters, because now we have the Wolverine Nightcrawler fun duo. We're seeing the beginnings, the emergence of Colossus and Kitty Pryde partnering off as their relationship grows. And now we can have a bit of a Storm and Cyclops too. But I don't mean in the Kitty Pryde Colossus way. I just mean the putting two characters together and having that relationship grow, and then being consistent about pairing them up over multiple sequential comics.
Yes. And that's one of the things that probably makes Claremont a great writer, is that he really does plant these seeds and then he waters them over long periods of time. So really putting relationships at the forefront and playing with dynamics and personal conflicts and personal growth in the face of these urgent circumstances, which allows these characters, especially Storm, to go on a really great character arc over his tenure of the series. One particular thing I just wanted to, maybe read here is as they're going through their battle, Storm says, "Your point. We're tied once more. That was a very nice and nasty move, Scott. Wolverine would have been proud of you." And you want to read maybe Scott's part there for a sec?
"Consider it my swan song. I'm beat.
I too. Shall we call this a draw?
The latest in a series. The games I win with experience are balanced by the ones you win with skill, and vice versa. You're very good."
You sound surprised.
"I like being the best. It's not easy getting used to having a rival, much less an equal. Come on, let's hit the showers."
And we know what the next panel should be.
But it's not.
No, it's actually I'm making light here, but truthfully, it is nice that they do have this position as equals, as rivals in a pretty genuine sense. Like, it's not anything where they're hostile to each other. It's like a good dynamic, and that's the start of something that, like I said, it will play out for a long time. And it's kind of neat because you can now sort of divide the team into two parts and have two leaders. You can do all sorts of things with that once you have these,
It's
partners
also,
is a neat thing.
It's also nice to see Scott have, humility too, right? Or at least an intelligence, but also like the respect. Because he's, again, one of the themes so far we often talk about is, gosh, Cyclops, you're either barking orders or misunderstanding people or misreading the situation, or right. And this one, he's spot on. He's genuine. He, you know what I mean? Like, it's a very kind thing, but also accurate thing for him to say.
Right.
And we haven't seen that kind of emotional self-awareness from him, I don't think, like, much throughout the series so far. So to get that, even those last two panels of him saying those words means so much to, like, just his general likability.
Sure. Oh, I just realized something. Before, in the introduction, I called him Nathan Summers.
Yeah, it's Christopher.
How could I forget the name Christopher?
I don't know.
That was me.
It's not like staring at you from across the friggin' divide of the internet.
That was me getting your name wrong as a power move. You know what I mean? Like,
I know. Oh, you're just like gaslighting me. I'm like, what are you talking about? Isn't Nathan Summers Cable?
Right.
Okay.
It's like
it's his grandson.
Or is it Cyclops' kid? Is he called Nathan?
Isn't he?
And is Cable Cyclops' kid?
Isn't Cable Cyclops' kid?
Do you know what? We're not there yet. Cable doesn't even exist.
Jeez. Almost. Sure it almost did. I mean, jeez.
Did you know what his name was actually originally going to be?
Cyclops' kid?
The character of Cable.
Like he had a different. No, what is it?
It was originally just going to be called Wire.
No. No.
Come on, like who names a character Cable? I love Cable as much as anyone, I guess, does. But man, those 90s names. Cable, Bishop, Gambit.
Veranda.
What?
They're all named. They're just items. Veranda. Desk drawer.
Are you just looking at things, Brick, and saying you love them? Okay. So we get an interlude here of some space stuff. And this is not a good looking spaceship. We get a cool, like Star Trek, the motion picture reference with a Voyager going by in deep space. But this
Cockrum then. So let's say this is Cockrum's pencils on the space.
Sure, it looks like it.
Okay, and basically even on the book Davenport, even on the book that you were showing earlier, and again, it was so nice that Julie gave that to us, and he flipping through it at the show, Fan Expo, and is he just a decade too late?
That's what I think.
I feel like these are like late 60s, early 70s. That's his sweet spot. These are things that I feel like they're anachronistic, like from a design perspective. They feel out of time, literally.
This looks like a chicken spaceship.
Design era.
Yes.
Yeah.
Looks like a chicken spaceship.
Sure. Do you remember that time
if you took,
in the 60s and everyone was designing chicken spaceships?
If you took an armored rubber chicken and threw it through space, it would look like that. Amazing. It's like the shape of it, like a rubber chicken spaceship. I just don't dig on it. It's okay.
And again, if we want to characterize Byrne, at least from just comparables here in terms of the run, his style felt very much of the decade, and maybe it's because he's of the decade. That's his most prominent decade. But this feels like 10 years before.
Oh baby, yes, Anthony, that's funny. There you go, and very timely, very timely.
Dart ball sweep. Don't forget Chesterfield.
Yes. So many silly things. So we see our friend Corsair, Major Christopher Summers, not Nathan, but Major Christopher Summers, on his way home with some urgency, and he's looking at a picture of the X-Men that he got somewhere. Don't know. I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It'd be better was an old Polaroid of them. He's just like got it in his hand.
Well, he met them. It was issue 108. It was Byrne's first issue. He meets them at the end of 107 with a really great splash and them charging in, almost like they were swinging from one boat to another boat, like on ropes. But it was Space Styles, and then Byrne is the one who gets to kind of make the connection. His art is the one where his brain is probed by Jean Grey, who realizes that that's Scott's dad, and she talks to Storm about it. But they don't take it any further. And then there is that one scene where when they're in the Savage Land, and Cyclops is looking at his reflection in the pool of water, and he's wearing a bandana. He's like wearing a headband, and he has some stubble and like a mustache growing in, and he makes mention. It kind of reminds him of Corsair. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that reflection scene in the Savage Land? Anyway, so those are sort of the two times most recently that we've been talking about Corsair in this series. So there's a Shi'ar dreadnought on his tail, and then it cuts back to the really, really strange, again, like this unexplainable mid-Atlantic island in Bermuda, or near Bermuda, in the heart of the Bermuda Triangle.
It's terrible. It doesn't even explain it. It just says it was raised from the ocean floor by Magneto. Right. So this thing existed as is on the ocean floor?
Yes.
Come on, Claremont.
Right.
You do better.
So I mentioned before that there was supposed to be a character that is on this island that then joins the X-Men. Mm-hmm. There's supposed to be a mer woman that will be another new character on the team. And when Cockrum understands, or is reminded by editorial that he will not have ownership over that character, and he will not get royalties for that character, he withholds that character from the creation of these comics, and later adds her to his graphic novel called The Futurians, which he thinks is going to be his next big success, and he will leave X-Men to pursue the Futurians, which bombs, and he loses out on all the future X-Men comics. And just to jump ahead, he later believes possibly that Louise Simonson and Chris Claremont encouraged him to go do Futurians so he would leave X-Men. He's like, yeah, I kind of think they wanted me off the book, and that's the way they did it, was convincing me that I seemed happier about Futurians than I did about X-Men. Wow. So he seems to be getting the short end of the stick often, and in this case, blaming someone else. And from what I can see about, I haven't heard anyone say a bad word about Claremont or about Louise Simonson as people.
Right.
So I don't think anyone's out to get Mr. Claremont. Anyway, I mean, Mr. Cockrum. So the X-Men are there, and they are, they're moving in.
Yeah.
They're setting up
their house
base.
has been trashed. So they've gone back to this Bermuda Triangle secret lair.
So should we read some of this then?
Sure.
Okay, interlude. In the heart of the legendary Bermuda Triangle lies an island raised from the ocean floor by Magneto, mutant master of magnetism, for use as his base. Recently, it was the site of an epic confrontation between him and the X-Men. After his defeat in X-Men 150, they appropriated the island for their own use. Because that's how things go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you need a hand with those crates, Colossus?
Yet, Dr. Cobor, when I am in my armored form, my strength is quite considerable. I can easily handle this load, but your offer is appreciated.
Those computer elements go to the laboratory, Peter. And then we see with these angled brackets, I know where that is, Piotr Nikolaevich. I will show you the way.
Lead on, little sister.
And as they're speaking in Russian to each other. Although she's got her little X t-shirt. And I don't know why, but I find it cute the X-Men have a little kid mascot. And
Sure.
I'm kind of excited to see where it goes with having her around.
I'm sure she won't. I'm sure she won't last as a character.
We'll see.
We'll see.
As they leave the wharf, Nightcrawler materializes in a characteristic burst of smoke and flame.
Ack! This island is so ancient, so alien. We know virtually nothing about it. I wonder if it's a safe haven for Illyana or the X-Men.
Should we have a child here?
Right.
Considering how often the security of our mansion has been breached of late, Nightcrawler, would it have been any safer to remain at home? I doubt it.
Professor, you read my thoughts.
I apologize, Kurt. I'm too attracted to my own hat.
That hat's a big deal.
Yes, he does. He does make that hat sing. I apologize, Kurt. But they were so obvious and so strong. I couldn't help it. There's a growing anti-mutant sentiment in the States. I fear, from what I've learned recently, that it may have official sanction. For the moment, it is simply too dangerous to remain in Westchester. Also, this island was one of Magneto's primary installations. Most of his records are intact. It is an unparalleled opportunity to learn about our arch foe. The benefits, I believe, far outweigh the risks.
I hope so. To be honest here, Professor, this place gives me the creeps.
Anthony says Xavier still hasn't changed clothes after finishing his shift at the African Lion Safari.
Come to the animal show, do. It's a great song.
And another thing we needed just to remind readers or viewers of the video is that Carol Danvers, yes, that Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel herself, at this point in comics continuity was known as Ms. Marvel, and a couple months back in Avengers Annual 10, she was depowered by Rogue, the memory and power stealing evil mutant.
Mm-hmm.
And she also had been before that, I guess, I don't even know how to go into it, but there's a whole sexual assault narrative. So she is a person who is in a state of kind of rebuilding and redefining and recovery. And she's remaining, sort of staying with the X-Men as a place where she can recoup amongst friends and where there's safety. So we see her as another kind of character in their ever expanding, I don't know, portfolio of characters that Claremont loves, that he incorporates back into his sort of own, his Claremont verse, which I think is kind of cool. Elsewhere, atop the tower that serves as the X-Men's living quarters stands a woman named Carol Danvers. I think I just said all this. As Ms. Marvel, she was a mainstay of the Avengers, the world's mightiest superhero team. But that was before she lost her powers, her memory, and very nearly her life at the hands of Rogue and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I did just should have just.
Yeah, I was going to say, you could have said it better yourself. Yeah.
Well, he did. He did a good job.
Yeah.
Do you want to read Carol?
Yeah, sure. Perhaps it would have been better if I had died. I feel so cut off from everything, everyone. The more I learn and remember, the more I realize how much I've truly lost. That can never be regained.
Major.
Who? Wolverine? You startled me. I didn't hear you approach.
No one ever does.
Jeez. Pardon my asking, but didn't we meet a few years ago?
Yeah. When you were Air Force Intelligence and I was Canadian Secret Service, you and your old partner, Colonel Mike Rossi, and me ran some pretty hairy capers together. Those were good times.
I don't remember. Not you, not the missions, not even Rossi. I loved him, Wolverine, yet I can't picture his face, hear his voice, and when I think of him, I feel nothing. Sorry, I didn't mean to come apart like that.
It's all right. Blast! What is it, Kitty? That was the wrong wall to phase through at the wrong time to do it.
Oh yeah, I see that. The professor sent me to find you.
You've done that. Now scram. I'm busy.
Go, Wolverine. I'll be fine. Really.
I like that he's playing a role of like support. Like his emotional awareness is higher than he's often been portrayed.
Right.
He's taking care, or at least making an effort to try and look out for this person where he's got some sort of connection. And I love that they're exploring a little bit of his past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We know he was a secret agent. We know he worked for the Canadian government, but we don't know that what kinds of missions he went on or what the context was. So I'm glad we get a little bit of that.
As we always say when we come across these little tidbits, you heard it here first, folks. When Jason and I put out the secret Canadian Origins Wolverine story that they're dying to make, you hear it from us. Those stories haven't been told yet. Those Secret Service ones.
There have been so many told.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, his origin is just gets piled on and piled on. There are a lot of people like you and I of a particular age who really want, just love the idea of those old Wolverine backstories. Yeah. But anyway, just kind of neat to see him. And that history with Carol Danvers plays out in a big way again as things continue down.
Oh, it does. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll talk about that when the time comes.
Boy, howdy.
Now, back to outer space.
Sure.
Do you want to do this part or just keep skipping?
Corsair.
He's coming. Corsair's coming.
Yeah, he's coming.
I don't think it adds a lot.
No,
he's talking to himself.
He talks to the third person. Corsair, my lad. You're reputed to be the best pilot in space. Yeah,
right. So he's coming in the chicken. It's on
coming in
the
the chicken.
Well, Corsair, leader of the Starjammers, a devil-may-care band of interstellar freebooters.
Yeah, is that like a okay? So when we talk, right? So like bootlegging Is that what he's going? Freebooters? Is that a name for pirates? Does anyone know that?
A freebooter?
A freebooter?
No, I don't know freebooting. I know rebooting. I don't know
Right.
freebooting.
And the show Reboot. Remember that one?
Of course.
Of course.
Yes. Graydon says everyone gets sweaty face in this episode for sure. Wait till
Is
you
that
see
what it means to freeboot? When you
Sweaty face.
Sweaty face when you freeboot? Freeboot! Okay.
He runs a virtually impassable gauntlet of nuclear missiles and energy beams. Ooh, wow. We return once more to Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. Please, everyone, note it is still intact. Recently rebuilt in the last couple issues. Yeah, Trevor's reminding us a freebooter is another word for a pirate.
It is. Okay, so I'm glad, Trevor, you know that, because that's the first time I've heard that phrase used. I figured that's what it was, but...
Sure. The context gives away a lot.
Freeboot. Okay.
All right. Do you want to be Cyclops or Storm?
Yeah, I'll be Cyclops.
Okay.
I must say I've outdone myself. Though when it comes to cooking, my standards are pretty low. Dinner's ready, Roro.
I have the mail, Scott.
Anything interesting?
Bills, magazines, circulars, the usual. Oh, here's a postcard from Kitty. Having a wonderful time. Wish you were here. How eloquent. Ah, kitten. She tried for a Caribbean tan and got sunburned instead. She's practicing her dancing. She's determined to be in the piece. What? In the piece of her teacher?
Her teacher, Stevie Hunter.
To be in the piece of. Sorry, in the piece her teacher.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Sorry, the dance piece. Gotcha. Yeah. Sorry. I was like, She's determined to be in the piece her teacher, Stevie Hunter, is choreographing. I must tell Stevie that. Everyone is well, though Carol seems quite depressed.
That's some postcard.
Kitty writes very small. What is that?
A letter from Emma Frost's Massachusetts Academy, officially revoking Kitty's admission. The White Queen was as good as her word. It's too late in the term. It would be too disruptive for Kitty's parents to transfer her anywhere else. So Xavier's school has her for at least one more year at least.
You underrate yourself. This is all quite delicious.
Thanks.
Scott, you called me your rival earlier. Am I? Do you wish to reclaim your old position as team leader?
Do you wish to give it up?
I am not certain. I took it reluctantly. The responsibility frightened me. But over the months, I have grown to accept it. I am good at it. Though I concede, you are the best.
Again, thanks. But to be honest, I'm not sure I want the job back. So much is changing in my life. I feel like I'm at a crossroads. Good Lord!
That roaring sound!
What the blazes is happening?
A spacecraft!
Careful! It's scattering debris all over the lawn. It's heading for the lake.
Exciting. In a matter of seconds, both X-Men are in the water searching for survivors. Someone must have seen or heard its approach. However, will we explain this?
I'm sure you'll think of something.
Wonderful.
There's the pilot. He's still alive.
Cyclops uses his beam underwater to...
Have we seen that before?
Zark. Well, it's just, it's plasma. It's the plasma, but it's a force blast. It's not like heat specifically.
Yeah.
They pull out the pilot, and Scott, I recognize.
Me too. It's Corsair.
He is far more than that, my friend. Uh-oh. And I fear the time has come to break my oath never to reveal the truth about him. Lords of the earth and air. She hasn't done one of those in a while. I'm so happy from the cartoon when you get that.
I know. Goddess. Aurora, I think we can forget about explanations.
It's a good explosion. Pretty exciting.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, so it took a few pages, and all of a sudden, the inciting incident is that, Corsair crashes into their house, essentially. Trevor says, I love this, freebooter. Freebooter. Yeah, pirate or lawless adventurer.
Why, sir, you're nothing but a freebooting scallywag.
All right, without reading the next page, a couple nice notes. I like the way the color is used. You know, in the first panel, you get a variety of blues.
Yep.
Second panel, you get, some reds.
More face sweat.
Yep, more Graydon is right. This would be the face sweatiest issue of all time. So, what order do you read these panels?
Airplane.
Yeah.
Then controls, behind the controls, those together. Yep. And then you have to go down to her being stabbed in her alien costume.
Yep.
And then in the orange in the middle with Jode! And then the one him running.
Okay, what I meant to say was, how do you read this without reading the text? How do you read it? Like you personally, what's your instinct?
To go straight from the top right, the control panels, to the middle.
Well, that's because that's what Cockrum did, right? Having the letters laid out this way.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have said Cockrum. It's the letter who exacerbates the problem. So we've got text box 1, text box 2, text box 3. That's all fine. Text box 4 is absolutely the next thing you're supposed to read after text box 3. And that's not the case when it's actually that's not what is intended in the writing. The narrative is not supposed to be that way, but that is how the letterist is, or the letterer is directing us, which is unfortunate. The only cue is that you get the ellipse, the 3 dots after the word universe.
Yes.
And then the 3 dots continue in the panel where it's the word where. It really isn't that big a deal. Like you read it wrong for a second, then you fix your reading, and it really doesn't impede anything. Like I don't want to overemphasize what a huge obstacle that is, but it's this little minor thing where you make a design flourish by having this unorthodox panel construction, and the reading goes to shit in a second. So, you gotta do a little better. You gotta put the narration box that is right below the third. You gotta put it under Corsair's shoulder.
Yeah,
it's got to be far side, and you got to emphasize things a little differently. And I don't know, just a bad lettering choice. But the panel design lends itself to that. Too bad. All right, but anyway,
so sad. We
get Corsair's origin here in a flashback as he's recovering from his. He's in his he's an unconscious state, and we see the plane he was flying. We see him and his wife. We see his wife just gets stabbed by Prince or the Emperor's brother Deken, and him being restrained by some armored guards, and we see him with the Starjammers, and him doing the same run we're going to see from Cyclops in a few pages, and he's on his way after Deken and armed forces have overthrown Empress Lilandra. And he wakes up. Would you like to read Corsair, or would you like? I guess I'll do Corsair. You do Scott. Is that?
Yeah, it's probably good.
Since we both have been confused for father and son.
Good point.
Maybe it's me playing your father. Acting in the role might be appropriate, or totally stupid. Here we go. And for the second time in his life, feels his heart break. Oh man. Oh, poor Corsair. Good evening, Cyclops. Pardon my dropping in unannounced.
Can the snappy patter the snappy patter?
Yeah.
Can the snappy patter, Corsair? Explain this locket and these Air Force dog tags. This woman's face is familiar. The 2 boys are me and my brother Alex.
The tags are mine, Scott. The woman is my wife. The children, my sons.
You're lying.
Scott, forgive me, but he is not. I got to stop us right there.
Okay.
Dude, this is one of the most important parts of the whole book.
Sure.
And we just get a panel.
Yeah.
Scott goes from hearing that the people in the photograph, which he's identified as himself, is Corsair's son, and he just says, "You're lying," and that's the end of it. Yeah. Like, this needs to be drawn out. We need to have a moment to breathe. We need to see some reactions. You know, this is more important than almost everything else that's happening, and it's given almost no weight. Can the patter, Potter? Well done, Graydon. Well done.
Can the patter, Pater?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
How the blazes do you know, Storm? Look out!
Sidrian hunters! It's me they're after.
They'll have to wait their turn until I get some answers, Corsair. You're mine.
Suits me, but we can't stay here. We need room to maneuver.
Follow me downstairs.
Did they leave him with his blaster? Like they just they didn't disarm him when they took him to bed. Which okay, that's cool. I'm cool with that. I also love the playfulness of having his blaster be like an old pistol.
Flintlock pistol.
Yeah, flintlock. Thank you. It's cheeky, you know. Like okay, that's what you want. He's just doing his Arrow Flynn thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. One little art note. Okay, do you see how Cyclops is in the drawing where he is using his optic blasts, and so he's shooting, and we see like it's going from the bottom of his face up. You know what I mean? So, anyway, the ink that is there that we'd see, like the shadow that we see in the line art that we see through his optic blast, there's actually a white screen tone placed on it.
Right.
So it like dulls the black. It's a neat technique as opposed to, adding, a thin coat of, I guess, some white paint or something like that. But yeah, you add a white screen and it grays it out a little bit. So when you add a color plate over top, it prints in fun ways. Anyway, just throwing that in there. Following me downstairs, Cyclops says, yes, more of them, Cyclops.
They're pouring through every window in the house. This house we just rebuilt, and now it's being destroyed again. You seem to know these horrors, Corsair. How do we fight them?
Their primary weakness is intense heat from my smoldering good looks. My blaster slows them down. A good-sized fusion bomb would rupture the entire matrix. You wouldn't happen to have one handy, would you? On the surface, Corsair jests, yet his undertone is deadly serious. If he possessed such a weapon, he would use it, regardless of the cost, to the surrounding community. That's quite a leap for her to make so far.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What sort of man is he? We need time to regain our balance, to think and plan. It is up to me to provide it. As she engages her amazing weather powers. Wow. She summons the wind. That is her namesake, and sets it spinning in the parlor. Look at that piano going, man. What a
Those
waste.
Spiders going. Help us, help us.
In seconds, Storm generates an incredible, irresistible vortex that reaches through the house, gathering everything that isn't fastened down. And we know a lot of things in that house are not fastened down.
No, sir.
The furniture does not survive. Our heroes, protected by Storm from her creation, do. Regrettably, so also do their foes.
Ooh.
Fighting, fighting, fighting. X-Men. The Sidri are freelancers working for bounty. The Imperial Shi'ar would never use them, so it's unlikely they came from the Dreadnought. That leaves the opposition, the traitors who kidnapped Lilandra.
My father, alive. As a kid, I dreamed of this meeting. I prayed for it. Now that it's happened, I feel happy, angry, mostly numb. I don't know what to do or say.
Scott is trying to hide it, but his emotions are tearing him apart.
Scott's doing his great Beast impersonation here, too.
That's good. I like it. And it is partly my fault. Blessed goddess, I kept silent about Corsair to spare him pain, only to cause him even greater pain. What next?
You tell me. Fight or run?
Sweaty face. Run. We need the other X-Men, and we must draw these monsters away before innocent civilians become involved.
We'll use the Blackbird. I'll call you over our micro transceivers when we're ready to lift off.
And I shall come if I'm able. What is she talking about?
Storm's acting as our rear guard to buy us the time we need to reach the plane. It's the only way.
One woman against the Sidri?
Come on.
You can't leave her.
The hangar's a mile down this tunnel, hidden beneath the copse on the estate. Security sensors indicate neither hangar nor tunnel have been breached. This monocar will have us there in a couple of minutes.
The ex-monocar. You cold-blooded. They'll tear her apart. We have to help her. She's your friend, Scott. Don't you care?
Storm. Aurora. Yes! But I'll leave her just the same, as I'd expect her to leave me.
The Sidri are generating additional armor, making themselves more resistant to my lightning bolts. And the strain is beginning to wear me down. I cannot maintain this effort much longer. A couple things we got to stop.
Sure.
Where do we see them with their armor? Claremont is doing a lot to explain things that Cockrum is not drawing.
Yeah.
So we got, Storm saying that the strain is tearing Scott apart. These multiple emotions that Claremont is just simply listing. We don't see any signs that he's having any of these feelings. He's action driven, but Claremont is like piling on all this, pathos and into the characters when it just looks like they're dealing with a threat, literally that's in front of them. But the inner turmoil is not being communicated in any way. This reminds me of the Marvel method of comic creation, where we get the script being talked about by these two creators, and Cockrum is responsible for pacing things without having the script necessarily in front of him, and he gets to plan the viewpoints and pace out the action, but he doesn't really know necessarily exactly what the dialogue is going to be until after he's drawn it. And he might not ever actually read the issue as it gets assembled in an assembly line fashion. So it is weird. Like the beats of them talking about, him finding his son and him finding his father and her with her guilt. Like these things needed to happen earlier and now.
Right.
Like it should permeate throughout the issue, but there needed to be something before. Anyway.
Yeah, totally.
And one last thing before we continue. Here we get Corsair sort of telling Scott he's being cold and he's cold-blooded and he's going to sacrifice his friend. And that's like a bad characteristic.
Right.
It's a negative one. But let's see if that continues through the issue. It's like this narrative that both these guys, Cyclops is a leader, is making a calculated decision, and he's willing to risk his friend's life, and Corsair is criticizing him. So let's see what happens as we continue.
Because he's his dad.
Yeah, everything he does is wrong. Not good enough.
Criticizing his son.
Yeah. Oh, man. Isn't it good to be a dad? Meanwhile, aboard the X-Men's custom-designed, specially modified version of the famed SR-71 Blackbird, which looks very little like this.
Yes. Storm's go ahead.
No, you.
Storm, this is Cyclops. Time to go. Scanners read all clear topside. All I have to do is pump the surface hatch, firewall the throttle, and we're on our way. The Blackbird's been named Kitty's Dragon?
Yes.
So was it named that before last issue?
No. So last issue, she personifies the Blackbird as a dragon in that issue.
Yeah.
And it then goes here as step number 2. And then it just becomes a thing, like a little background kind of a gag or a joke that will continue until the point when they decide, what would be kind of fun if Kitty had a dragon. And that's where Lockheed the Dragon comes from. And of course, do you know who makes the SR-71 Blackbird?
Lockheed Martin.
There you go.
Wow. So this book is funded by the American Industrial Military Complex?
Now you say that, and now you should go look at the X-Men feature films from Fox. And the first film is absolutely funded by the American. Did you call it?
Industrial military complex.
Yes, the American military funded parts of that movie, and they found that like this idea of being part of an organization that is trained and fights terrorism
Sure.
is like enlistment goes up after things like X-Men and Top Gun and those kinds of films that are
There's a direct correlation.
yes. And when the American military realizes that, they start using I'd say probably pretty early on, they start to use films and TV as recruitment tools, propaganda and recruitment
I
tools.
thought that watching Tropic Thunder.
And let me say, I'm not necessarily criticizing this as a practice. It's just a commonly known, background piece to some of these entertainment things. Like, I grew up, openly loving like G.I. Joe and recognizing that it was definitely some American military propaganda, and I loved it, and I love it still. Sure. And it's okay. There you go. It's not inherently wrong, as long as we're not being fooled by it or tricked in some way. And not a moment too soon. I haven't tried this maneuver in ages. I hope it works, says Storm. I really do like the amorphic water thing happening at her feet.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting.
It's like she's conjuring something. I think it's cool. Trevor's adding to this. He says, I wanted to join the army after seeing Stripes.
Yeah. I mean, who would
the physical cost to her is shattering as she uses her elemental powers to conjure a monsoon, creating a flash flood in the narrow tunnel, which she hurls at the aliens. Yet she still finds the strength enough to streak down the transit tunnel to the hangar at full speed. This is why both Scott and I knew I had to stay, because wherever the Blackbird went, I could follow. Once she was airborne, Scott could not. Seconds later, thunder ripples across the town of Salem Center, scaring everyone. Awakened, or is it scarring? No, this is scaring, isn't it? It's scaring. Scarring would be 2 hours.
It's scaring, yeah, you're right.
Scaring everyone, awakened by the crash of Corsair's starship, as 2 ultra high performance jet engines punch 77,000 kilograms of sleek ebony aircraft straight up into the sky. Onboard cameras and sensors operational to gather as much data as possible. For Professor X, the plane makes a low pass over the mansion.
My lord, Charles loved that old house. I did too. It was the only real home I remember. It'll break his heart to see it like this again and again and again.
In the series, this is like, has it been wrecked completely in the series so far yet? I don't think it has. There's been damage.
I mean, damaged heavily, because we've now had the alien attack with Kitty. We had the Sentinels attack a few issues ago and ripped the place to shreds. So yeah.
But this is looks like it's flattened now.
Yeah, it's flattened. Yeah.
Juggernaut styles. We get something fun coming here. We get these spider monsters. They the Sidri, they don't need a spaceship. They are a ship.
Yeah.
They morph together.
It's morphin' time.
They form into one giant manta ray, which is kind of cool.
It's kind of neat.
On that note, let's shift our scene briefly to the FAA Regional Air Traffic Control Center on Long Island, responsible for the routing and directing all aircraft in the New York area. Go ahead.
Phil.
Unidentified contact, Roy. Popped out of nowhere in Westchester. Vector is due toward The city at low altitude. It won't acknowledge my transmissions.
I'll let the Air Forces. Good grief. What the heck is that?
I don't know, but it's as big as a skyscraper. And it's barreling full tilt into the most crowded air space on Earth.
And
Yow!
then you have an airplane that says "Yow."
Yeah. It's crazy.
I love
this little scene. Phil
It
Roy.
All I kept thinking of is, so he says it popped up out of nowhere in Westchester. So if these guys are at the controls, they must have seen so much weird shit around Westchester that the better line would be pop up around Westchester. So I guess it's one of those things again.
Right.
I guess we'll just we all know what this is, right? We all know what this is. Okay.
Yeah. You owe me another 5 spot, Phil.
Yeah, exactly. Another Westchester drink.
It's your Westchester UFO. It's back again. I don't know if you're a fan of Cheers or not.
Hey, it turns out we weren't doing Long Island accents, according to Trevor.
No, we weren't. No, Trevor.
Long Island, Trevor.
I don't know if you know this, but people can work in lots of different places. They don't have to be born there. I mean, these are regional, like FAA regional air traffic controllers. They come from all over the country. So, just because you are from the New York area doesn't mean that you are the master of all accents for the whole country, all right? Just dial it back there, buddy. Yeah, I didn't have a good accent at all to do, so I shit the bed on that pretty good. But in my head, it was I wanted to, and I can't do it. I want it to be Cliff Clavin's character in
Cliff. Yeah.
Superman 2.
Oh, is he showing in Superman 2?
He is. He's working he's in Houston. So you know how General Zod and the other 2 Kryptonians arrive on the moon?
Yeah.
One of the dudes on the comms in Houston, it's John Ratzenberger.
So good.
He had a couple of those really interesting supporting roles, like small sort of walk-on roles in the early 80s.
Empire Strikes Back, right?
Exactly. Yeah, he's like, I don't know what they call it. Not like
It's just everything he says.
Yeah, I can't do a good Cliffy impression. I wish
they
I
did
could.
a really funny. So I just finished. I don't know what it was. So I just was on a Disney cruise, and of course they show Disney movies all the time, back to back to back to back. And I was watching one Pixar.
The Underminer.
What's that?
He's the Underminer.
Well, he's all of them, but he in the post credits they show him, and it's like, hey, I love this character, and he's like, oh, they just got the same guy to the same voice, and it's like him in Cars, him in Monsters Inc., him in right.
He's
it was very funny.
He's the piggy bank.
Yeah, he's Ham. Yeah.
Yeah, Ham. Toy Story. Right.
Yeah. Good times.
Oh, I feel bad now because Trevor says he knows Phil. He's from the Bronx. Good point. Good point. I should have known better. Yeah, Ratzenberger, man. He's a legend. But I love that he was in those small roles. And you could even argue that there is an action figure of a rebel trooper, or rather a rebel commander on Hoth.
Yeah.
And it's not supposed to be the guy that's, running the hangar. But you could totally argue that like Kenner made a John Ratzenberger figure because he has the mustache too. Mustache inspired by Corsair. We should do a whole line of mustaches called Inspired by Corsair. So there's an aerial battle as the Sidri giant mercenary thing is following the Lockheed Stratojet through New York. Okay, yeah, that's crazy. Anthony says, he's the Stan Lee of the Pixar universe. Good point. Well, he is and he isn't, because he's not also taking credit for other people's work. So he can't be Stan Lee. So throwing some shade at a legend there, yeah. punching down to a dead man. There you go. It's okay. How many people do you think died? Is that hitting those blasts hitting the water or hitting the
Well,
shore?
I think
I think the water.
We are to assume that they are.
Yeah, but the water's perfectly still.
Well, then
come on, man.
Dave Cockrum. I don't know.
So this is where I think, again, like drawing it differently might be more effective. So you can have like a delayed effect. So if you switch the way the panel is going from left to right instead, have the jet moving across as we are supposed to read, and each of the blasts happens in time as our eyes go across. So you can have one, like a variety of explosions at different stages of the impact, and have the water moving, man. Like, there's nothing in the... Anyway, it's just lame. Yeah. Oh, gesundheit, Chris.
Oh, you heard me?
No, I heard that you muted because there's an ambient noise from your space.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you.
Corsair says, I may be stating the obvious, lad, but this is hardly the way to safeguard innocent lives.
Thanks, Pop. I needed that. We can't use conventional weapons. They're too dangerous to others, too difficult to control. Doesn't mean we're helpless. Far from it. I've been waiting for a chance to field test this experimental windshield. Looks like this is it.
Okay, super cool idea that he can shoot through the windshield.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that he's not just a pilot. He's also a weapon.
He's his own gunner.
Yes, he fires a full power optic blast as the beam hits the canopy, itself composed of a synthesis of plexiglass and ruby quartz. Special polarizing elements focus and amplify its energy as a ruby does with coherent light in a laser. What the hell? The effect is most impressive. Very cool that he flies a jet around and shoots out the front of it. Like that, as a kid, I want that toy of like this shooting.
Right.
Anyway, now, awesome connection to a terrible movie.
Yeah, I was going to say
Dark Phoenix. Oh, please, you go ahead.
No, you go. That's cool.
All right, then. In Dark Phoenix, when they go to space to rescue the astronauts, the American astronauts on the space shuttle, in the space shuttle, Cyclops has a almost periscope-looking device that they lower down, and he like puts his head into it, and it shoots his optic blasts out into space, just like this.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was unique, and now I see right from this. There you go. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I dig. More airplane stuff, flying around.
Yep.
And they talk about how they're going to disrupt the matrix of the Sidri. And they start to misspell it now, by the way. Now it's spelled Sindri.
Yeah.
And it stays that way for the rest of the issue, but I will read it Sidri. And they talk about disrupting its power matrix, or, and how are they going to do that? And so it's part of the conversation is they got to figure out a strategy. And as they fly through New York, and there's some fancy flying, and, there's a fun comedic panel of, Neville, that's an aeroplane.
So it is, my dear.
That's the end of that. Just cut to these people having their dinner. All right. Or whatever meal that is. Very nice flying, son. Couldn't have done it better myself.
Thanks, Dad. Oh, by the way, the name is Cyclops, mister. And you have the right to call me anything else.
What? Look at the animosity. Scott, the forces of nature are often far greater than the woman who summons them. Does anything I'm saying here make sense? If you keep hammering away at the Sidri while I create a gale...
It's worth a try, Aurora. We're both pretty tired. So we're not going to do it.
From all that handball.
Can you maintain total control over your storm?
I shall have to, shan't I?
Good luck.
She's picking up language tips from the couple eating dinner. Shan't I? And that drawing of her face just doesn't look like Cockrum.
Nah.
It looks like a different artist. Anyway. To do what is necessary, I must warp weather patterns throughout the New York Metroplex. Transformer reference. The effects of such an atmospheric trauma will be felt for days, perhaps longer, and they may be severe. Yet, if I do nothing, we three are surely doomed. Are our lives worth endangering the city? If the answer is yes, go to page 17. If the answer is no, choose a new series. If the answer is yes, are we not then in danger of following the same arrogant path that Magneto trod? What is with her language? So often it seems we must choose, not between good and bad, but between the lesser of two evils. The lightning bolt was to draw the thing's attention and fire. It seems my ploy is completely successful. I must ride with the winds. I must ride the winds with all my speed and skill. I am a far smaller and agile target than the Blackbird, but I also lack its armor and defenses. It might survive a direct hit. I most certainly would not. This is exhausting. Helicopter, yeah, too close to the action. They're dead.
Except we got a bit of fun too here.
Yeah.
So, do we try our Long Island accents again? Or
No, I don't have a Long Island
The
accent.
NYPD cops. I don't know what that is. What's that sound?
Yeah, so
you do Dennis Franz.
so the helicopter from the NYPD gets exploded. It crashed.
Exploded.
We get the two of them on a nearby rooftop, and they're very beautifully named, Gino and Lou.
Gino and Lou.
You want to read? Why don't you read them both? You're good with accents.
All right, I'll try. All right. We're dead, right, Gino? That's an angel coming to take us to heaven. Lou, I don't believe what I'm seeing.
And the pose that Lou is in, like this bent over backwards.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what. Yeah, Lou is doing like an arch, like a gymnastics, like an arch pose. Yeah, it's just so bizarre, so bizarre. Anyway, relax your bodies, officers. I will not let you fall. I will have you safely on the ground in a matter of moments.
Who? What are you, lady?
I am Storm, an X-Man, and a friend. Anyway, just so silly.
It's so silly.
Your accent's great. Okay. So there's this huge crazy weather stuff going on, and she intensifies her powers, and lightning and a huge vortex, and it just goes nuts. But what I we want to turn the page as things climax. They're like, figure what's the strategy here? What do? We got to blow these guys up. We don't want to endanger everybody, but we got to do something. Yeah. So as the weather is continuing to impact them negatively, the Matrix is starting to lose its cohesiveness. One hard punch should disrupt it completely, and they fly right through.
Right through it, yeah.
And they're I'm just looking for where it says their location.
Oh, it's a petroleum storage facility.
Right.
Perfect.
Where does it say that, by the way?
Top of the last panel on the left hand.
Yes, I see. So, right. Petroleum storage facility. And all those people are in huge danger. And Corsair is like, blast that tank farm. Set the oil afire. And the explosion is sure to kill it.
Kill it? You mean that thing's alive? I thought it was a construct. A mechanism.
It's a colony creature, living and sentient. So what?
I can't. I won't kill Corsair.
There's no time for scruples, boy. It has no compunctions about killing you or anyone else who gets in its way. You sanctimonious fool. We can't let it regenerate. We've only seconds to act. Seconds before what?
Storm, stop him.
Why? Corsair, don't!
I'm sorry, but I've got no alternative. I've fought these things. You haven't. This is the only way. Believe me. Now we can go.
So I like that drawing too of the
Yeah, it's cool.
explosion. It's kind of fun.
Whoa, who's that guy in the cowboy hat?
Was that Professor X?
JS,
Jim Shooter himself.
the man who shot JR.
Yeah, I think that's a JR joke.
Yep.
I think this is Cyclops talking.
What about the refinery workers, Corsair? The firemen who risked their lives to extinguish that blaze? The cost and pollution to the environment? Do you consider that? Do you care?
Callous as it sounds, Cyclops. All of that is negligible, even expendable. You worry about a few score lives. I'm trying to save the world.
This world. You are correct, Corsair. It is callous and cruel and inhuman.
Then I guess so am I.
All right, mister. Drop the other
Drink.
shoe. Explain yourself. What does the Earth need saving, and from whom?
10 standard days ago, a meeting of the Shi'ar Grand Council was raided by a terrorist commando force. Most of the ministers were slaughtered in the attack, some executed even after they'd surrendered. Lilandra was kidnapped. My Starjammers and I were implicated in the trail left by the terrorists led straight to Earth. A fast battle force led by Chancellor Araki and Admiral of the Fleet Lord Samedar set out immediately to rescue her. Lead elements of the force have already arrived in local Earth space. They're prepared to go to any lengths to liberate their Empress or avenge her. And if, in the process, they have to reduce the Earth to a lifeless, burned-out cinder, so be it.
Ooh.
Next issue,
Death.
Deathbird. Deathbird.
So that takes us to the end of the issue,
Yeah,
which is a lot of fun. Before we go on to the X-Mail there,
sure.
and that corner box picture, which I'd love to talk about. This idea of like sacrificing is to me like this running theme between these two characters, the father and son. You know, we get Corsair saying, "Hey, how could you sacrifice your friend, this woman, and leave her behind?" And Cyclops is like, "Hey, listen, mister, I know what I'm doing." And then here we get Corsair saying, "We're going to sacrifice all these people to save everybody." And Cyclops says, "Mister, what are you doing, mister?" But also, that's the foundation of their conflict, right? Is that Corsair sacrificed himself and his wife to save the children. And Cyclops misunderstands it or sees it as being abandoned. You know, it seems cruel, it seems heartless,
right?
But it saves the children's lives. Now, this also continues on the animated interpretation. Their conflict in the first time that they meet, Corsair wants to use Cyclops as a way to kill Emperor Decan, because he's trying to get the Mcron crystal.
Sure.
And he's like, if I get Cyclops close enough, and whoop, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, something happened, and I'm no longer using my computer. One sec. Is it Hold on. I have to remember my password and sign back in. I might have just locked myself out. Oh, it didn't go away? It was okay? Did my screen go black?
No.
All right. I think
Let's just look at the comic up. Everything's all right.
All right, good. Sorry, man. Cyclops is like, I'm not killing all these people or killing the Emperor just because, you know, I'm not a murderer. And Corsair is telling him, like, this is to save the universe. Like you got to kill to save everybody else. Like it's this ongoing like thing between the two of them is this sort of moral quandary, and I find that kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Anthony says, I do like the Cyclops Corsair moment of tension at the end. We went from the heart of many X-Men comics being about the fine line of if when to act, when people are threatened, to Corsair's approach. What are you going to do there? For sure. Yeah, like innocent bystanders, he's saying. You got to risk them. And it is one of those decisions no one ever really wants to make, I guess, in real life, and it's a tough one. And we see in so many of our fictional adventures where characters order the sacrifice of their subordinates for the greater good, as well as you and I. We've seen that a lot as we were researching and learning about the Canadian efforts in World War One. As we're working on our comic, how the officers took that kind of role, some of them doing it as from great distances without thinking about those in the trenches, and some probably did it with a very heavy heart. But I want to just circle back to, why is this drawing here? I wonder what that's about. The little picture of the faces,
the corner box.
Yeah, is it part of someone's question? I don't know. I don't see anything.
No,
just to fill space.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love this one letter from David Christopher. Chris, Dave, and Joseph. Kitty's new outfit must go. I hate it. Hate. Rend, tear, dismember, loathing, disgust, revulsion.
All caps.
That's hilarious and understandable. Yeah, it obviously doesn't last, which is good. Anyway, I've got to draw Kitty's corner box head to add to the corner box drawing that I've got, so I can swap out Banshee and Subhurry.
Yeah, I got to swap out Banshee.
Yeah, it's time. But it should be fun. I get to also draw her not making a mopey face. I get to draw her either making a serious or a happy face, or one eyebrow cocked, because she's kind of smart and clever and a little cheeky. So I'm interested in doing that. So what were your thoughts about this issue, sir?
It's not bad. I think again, I think you mentioned in the, it's the heart. It's Cyclops and Corsair. I think we would have liked to see more of the reveal be more than one panel, and we move on to the fighting and the explosions. But it's a major moment, I imagine, in the trajectory of these characters, especially Cyclops. So we get a lot. That's the thing, is we get a lot of interpersonal pieces, whether it's Cyclops and Storm or Cyclops and Corsair, that are like kind of really integral to moving the characters forward. So for that reason alone, I think it's a pretty strong issue, just because of how important it appears to be in the development of the series.
Yeah, I really do like those moments between the conversation that started between Storm and Cyclops, and then of course between Corsair.
And it's kind of, then you have like this entity that's forming and reforming, and this shootout in downtown. It's silly. It just becomes a silly thing. But
that's the fun comic book part.
That's the
superhero comic.
Yeah.
I obviously, like, that's not where my head is at now as a reader. But I also don't think it was a really dynamic aerial battle. I do like the idea of having to blow up some refinery or some oil warehouse, petroleum farm. I think it was kind of interesting. But I was in it for the relationships this time, for sure. Yeah. There you go, man. What else do you want to talk about before we go? Raid.
We are part of a Kickstarter at the moment that just launched yesterday. Collectible cards, those old Marvel cards from the 90s, or DC cards in the 90s. Whole bunch of new cards put out by people like us and a whole bunch of other indie creators, primarily in the Toronto, Southwestern Ontario area, maybe Montreal as well. few known names on that list as well. A few people who've done things like Gotham Central and Red Robin. And then there's people like us as well, and with our characters and our stories. So anyway, that is on Kickstarter. You can hit the link through our socials, hit our link tree up. The link is right there. It is, I think, just over 2/3 the way funded. Hey, we love your support. Here it is. Here's the link right here. Creator Visions trading card set. If you want to learn more, it's kind of an intro to the stories, our characters in a fun and engaging way. If you ever love those power sets in the back of those Marvel trading cards, then I'm sure you get a kick out of these. So yeah, that's the big thing that's happening right now, and it's looking in good shape.
Yeah, and the early bird I think only has a day to go.
Sure.
For and some fun stretch goals. I'm super excited to get collectible cards of characters that we created. It should be super fun, and also I just can't wait to see what everyone else did, and then think ahead of like, oh, what will we do next?
Yeah,
what's
totally.
the next another set of cards down the road. It is fun, so I'm very excited for that. That's very cool.
Yeah.
I will add the Kickstarter to the links below this video.
Oh, please.
So I'll add in the description below. I'll add that.
Excellent.
You can find our comics, of course, at group7comics.ca, where you can pick up the latest issues of Peregrines or our original trade of issues 1 through 6, Group of 7 and Most Secret Tale. Group7comics.ca. You can follow us on all the socials at Group of 7 Comics. You can find Chris there at Chris Sanagan, or me there at Jason Lapidus Art. And please hit like and subscribe. Share the video. Recommend to other people if you think they would enjoy such a thing. Or send it to people that you want to torture who would not enjoy such a thing. I'm okay with being used to hurt other people.
Send it to people in Long Island who don't know what they said.
Who's got 2 thumbs and back the Kickstarter? This guy. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony.
That's a lot of fun. Thank you for that. That's very cool. I hope you enjoy them when you get your set, and I can't wait to see them too.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, we got lots of DC stuff we could be talking about.
Oh, my goodness.
The news dropped by James Gunn today. Really, I don't think we should get into it, truthfully. I think there's a lot of other channels talking about it, but I would love to, get into it one day. But just interesting that he's put himself in front of the camera and got out in front of all the talk, making some announcements. Instead of doing it at like San Diego Comic-Con, the way that Feige has done it in years past, or having their own event. So I thought it was kind of an interesting thing. And I'm down for it. Want to make announcements on YouTube? Like, yeah, I subscribe. Like, I want to see that stuff. So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Anything else you want to throw out there?
No, I think that's it.
Well, my friend, get some sleep. I know you were tired, probably. And we'll do this again.
It's on West Coast time.
Yeah. We'll do this again next week with issue 155.
Which is Deathbird.
And more Mike Mignola covers for the X-Men classics. So I'm excited just to try and track some of those down in the meantime.
Totally.
I got to start working on my hardcover book. Just 2 copies. Or sorry, you. Yeah, anyway. We'll talk soon. All right, everyone. Have a great night. Thanks for hanging out with us. And we will see you next week. All right? X-Men.
Out.